Glad to see you were able to find this video. I'd also be glad to hear from you. Let me know what you want to see or what you're having trouble with so that I can make content that's useful and meaningful to you. With that said, let's jump right in, shall we? Our previous video was the lecture portion of our brackets module within the Orders of Operations video series that we're doing here on this channel. And essentially what we did here is we looked at how brackets work within the Orders of Operations. So how do you handle brackets within brackets, so child brackets? We also looked at how do you go about expanding brackets. So if you have something directly beside a bracket, how do you handle that, whether it be a number or a sign? And we're at the point now where if you are having any issues with anything we've covered so far, it's all going to come together here. So if you're struggling with stuff, you're going to find the brackets section and everything else from here very difficult. That's why we did addition and subtraction first. Addition and subtraction are technically the last step in the order of operations, but we looked at it first because in theory you should feel comfortable with addition and subtraction. If you're having trouble with addition and subtraction, I did create some digital flashcards which you can use to practice to make sure you get more familiar with it. But really what we were ending up focusing on was the methodology of being able to solve an equation. Then the next week we looked at working with signs, and this isn't a specific step within the orders of operations, but it's still critical to being able to get the correct answer, to actually solve an equation. You need to know how to handle a conversion of two signs next to each other. So I do suggest you go back and really feel comfortable with them. If you have any doubts or any questions, please let me know so I can clarify. It's only going to get harder from here. With that said, this video is the practice portion of the brackets module. So at the end of the Tuesday lecture video, I ended up giving a bunch of example questions that we could go through to solve. And so today we're going to go through each and every one of them and solve them so that way you get not just the answer, but the methodology and the process of what your example or your answers should look like. So just a high-level review to make sure we're all on the same page. If we remember our acronym, BEDMIS, brackets are actually the first operation. It's the B, so we're always solving brackets first. And we always want to start with brackets, and then we ask, are there any more brackets? So when we find a bracket, we go, are there any child brackets? And so we'll go into it and see if we can find another bracket. If we can, we start over again and say, are there any more brackets? Until we find the innermost bracket. Then we will solve the innermost bracket and work our way out. So there's that. There's also how do you handle having a number or a sign directly next to an opening bracket. If you have a number or a sign directly beside a bracket, that means you need to expand it out. And expanding means you're multiplying. You're taking whatever's on the outside and multiplying it by what's inside. This is where people are going to drop their signs or convert them incorrectly, so please pay attention to your signs. It will make a drastic change in your answer as you go through. So here is the list of questions that I had given out at the end of the lecture video. And I really hope you went through and actually did them. Watching me do it is one thing, and it's a great review, but it's really critical that you actually go in and actually solve them. Doing them by hand even is very beneficial because it gives you the motor skills to be able to remember. It's the muscle memory. So I really encourage you to actually write them out by hand, but at the very least, try them yourself. When you watch someone else do it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense. But once you actually start doing it, sometimes you'll forget. And the more you do it yourself, the more you'll remember, oh, I have to do this step and then this step and then this step. And it just becomes like second nature. It's a skill like anything else. So I do suggest you go ahead and practice. With that said, let's go ahead and start looking at the very first question. So the first thing we want to ask, are there any brackets? So let's take a peek. Are there any brackets? Yes, right out of the gate we have some brackets. We have 5 plus 8. There's no brackets within this bracket, so we can go ahead and just solve this bracket. So 5 plus 8 is equal to 13, and we drop the rest of the equation. So now we look at our new line, 13 minus, and then we have a new bracket. So we start over. Are there any brackets within our bracket? There are no children, so we can go ahead and just solve the contents of our bracket. 1 minus 2 is equal to negative 1. And so now we drop the rest of the equation and we have 13 minus an opening bracket and a minus. So when we have a minus and a minus, that's going to convert to a positive. And then a 1 because if you have a sign just by itself, it's being representative of a 1. We're just not showing the 1. So it's essentially saying -1 times -1. And the negative turn out to be positive, and then 1 times 1 is 1. So we can change the equation to be 13 plus 1. Now this is just straight addition, so 13 plus 1 is equal to 14, giving us a final answer of 14. So we start at B and we go, are there any brackets? We're always going to start with, are there any brackets? And so let's look. We have 3 and then we have a bracket. So we start over, are there any brackets within our bracket? And no, there are no children, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of our bracket. So we have to bring the 3 down, and then we solve 2 minus 5, and that's equal to -3. Now our new line is 3 opening bracket -3. Having a 3 directly beside an opening bracket means we're multiplying, so it's 3 times -3. So just to make sure that we're all understanding what expanding means, I'm going to go and explicitly say the multiplication step. This line is exactly the same as the previous line. So as you get more familiar with it and you know that multiplication is expanding, you don't actually have to write this step. This step is being put here for you to make sure you understand that expanding means multiplying, because this is what we're learning right now. We're learning how to expand and how to solve brackets. But moving forward, you don't need to have the multiplication sign if you don't want. If you want to, feel free. There's nothing wrong with showing more work, so just keep that in mind. Whatever's easier for you. So we look at our new line. We have 3 times a -3. So one is a positive and one is a negative. A positive and a negative will convert down to a negative, and 3 times 3 is equal to 9, so it gives us a final answer of -9. Okay, so now we'll look at C. The first thing we want to do is check to see if there's any brackets. So we have -2 and then an opening bracket. So we found a bracket, so we have to start over. Are there any more brackets? -7, -2. So there are no children in here, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of our bracket. -7 minus 2 is equal to -9, and we drop the rest of the equation. Regardless if it's on the left or on the right, we want to make sure we bring everything down. So we have -2 and then an opening bracket. That means we are expanding. Expanding means multiplying, so we're going to go ahead and say -2 times -9. A minus times a minus gets converted to a positive, and 2 times 9 is equal to 18, so that gives us 18. So D is a little bit longer, but longer doesn't mean harder. Because we're only solving one operation per step, it's only making it longer, not more complicated. So let's go ahead and start with the very first thing. Are there any brackets? Yes, right out of the gate there's a bracket. So we ask, are there any more brackets? So let's look to see if there's any brackets within. 2 plus, there's another opening bracket. So we start over again. Are there any brackets? 4 plus 3 closing bracket. So there's no child brackets within this one. So we can say that this is the innermost bracket, and we can go ahead and solve 4 plus 3 and drop the rest of the equation. So 4 plus 3 is equal to 7, and we drop everything else on the left and the right. It's critical that you bring the left and the right. The only thing we're changing is 4 plus 3 because we're only solving one operation at a time, and we're doing each operation on its own step. So now we look at our new line and we have to ask ourselves, are there any brackets? So yes, there's a bracket right out of the gate. We have 2 plus and then another bracket. So if we have a sign and a bracket right next to each other, what we're essentially saying is that it's +1 times a positive 7. So a positive times a positive is going to result in a positive, and 1 times 7 is equal to 7. So we can reduce this down to 2 plus 7. So we can remove the brackets, and of course we drop the rest of our equation. So now we start over again. Are there any brackets? And yes, there's a bracket right out of the start. Is there any child brackets? No, we've already solved all the child brackets, so we can go ahead and just solve this bracket. So 2 plus 7 is equal to 9, and we drop the rest of the equation. So now we look at our new line and we say, is there any brackets? So there's nothing to solve in the first one, it's just 9, so we can continue on. And we see there's another set of brackets. So we ask, are there any children? There are no child brackets, so we can go ahead and just solve the contents of this bracket. 2 minus 1 is equal to 1, and we drop the rest of the equation. We've lost the brackets here because there's nothing to expand. These brackets were here for just legibility purposes, for tracking, so you could keep through. So removing these brackets doesn't change the equation, it just cleans up the line a little bit. So now we look at our new line. We have 9 minus 3, opening bracket. A number directly beside an opening bracket means we're multiplying because we're expanding. So negative 3 times 1, a positive 1. Negative times a positive reduces or converts into a negative number, and 3 times 1 is 3, so we can expand that out here so we can actually visually see it. And then negative 3 times 1 is still equal to negative 3. And now we have just straight subtraction. 9 minus 3 is equal to 6, giving us a final answer of 6. Let's take a peek at E. We're looking for a bracket, so let's see, minus 3, and then an opening bracket. Are there any child brackets? There are no child brackets. That means we can go ahead and solve the contents of E. Minus 8 minus 9 is equal to minus 17, and we remember to drop the rest of the equation. Now we look at our new line. We have minus 3 and then an opening bracket. Having an opening bracket directly beside a number means we have to expand. Expand means multiply, so we're saying negative 3 times negative 17. A negative times a negative results in a positive, and 3 times 17 is equal to 51, so our final answer is positive 51. We look at F, we ask, are there any brackets? And yes, there's a bracket right out of the gate, so now we say, are there any child brackets? So 4 minus 2, there are no children here, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of our first bracket. 4 minus 2 is equal to 2, and we drop the rest of the equation down. So now we look at our new line. Is there any brackets we can find? So the first bracket, there's nothing to solve, so we continue on through and we see the second set of brackets. So we start again. Are there any child brackets? There are no child brackets, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of the second bracket. Minus 3 plus 1 is equal to negative 2. And again, these brackets around the first two were just there for legibility purposes. They were residual from the dropping down. So now we have 2 with an opening bracket. 2 next to an opening bracket means that we're expanding. Expanding means we're multiplying, so it becomes 2 times negative 2. And a positive times a negative results in a negative, and 2 times 2 is equal to 4, so our answer is negative 4. Signs are critical, so remember to keep track of them. Let's look at G. So we have an opening bracket right out of the gate, and there's no child bracket, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of G. So minus 2 plus 7 is equal to 5, and we drop the rest of the equation. So we look at our new line. We have 5 in a brackets, but there's nothing to solve here, so we can continue on to the next set of brackets. We have opening bracket, 4 plus 2. So there's no children in here, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of the second bracket. 4 plus 2 is equal to 6. And so now we can look at our new line. After we bring down, always remember to drop the rest of your equation. We have 5 next to an opening bracket. That means expand. Expand means multiply. 5 times 6 is equal to 30, giving us a final answer of 30. Let's take a peek at H. So again, we always start off, are there any brackets? And yes, we have a bracket, so let's go ahead and see if there's any child brackets. So we can see that there's another bracket directly after the bracket. Here we have 5 plus 8. So there's no children within here, so we can go ahead and say 5 plus 8 is equal to 13. And we drop the rest of the equation. So now we look at our new bracket and we say, are there any child brackets? So yes, there's a child bracket. There's 4 times 3. There's nothing within that, so we can go ahead and solve 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is equal to 12, and we drop the rest of the equation. So everything on the left and everything on the right. So now when we look at our equation, we have a 13 directly beside an opening bracket. This means expand. Expand means multiply. 13 times 12 is equal to 156, and we drop the rest of the equation. 156 minus 5 is equal to 151, giving us a final answer of 151. I, we start off looking for brackets, so there's a 4 plus 2 minus, and then an opening bracket. So we check to see if there's another opening bracket. And there are none, so that means there's no children, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of the first bracket. 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, and we drop the rest of the equation. So now when we look here, we have a negative sign directly beside an open bracket. This means that we're expanding, so that's saying negative 1 times 3. A negative times a negative is a negative. A negative times a negative is a positive, but here we have a negative times a positive. Got to keep track of your signs. A negative times a positive will result in a negative. And 1 times 3 is 3, so we're going to get a negative 3. And we drop the rest of the equation. 4 plus 2 is equal to 6, and we drop the rest of the equation. 6 minus 3 is equal to 3, and that gives us a final answer of 3. So you got to remember to keep track of your signs. It's easy to make a mistake, like I just did. It's very easy to make a mistake with your signs. So just really try to make a conscious effort to keep track of your signs. And it's one of those things that aren't going to stand out at you when you're reviewing your answer. So just really do try to make a conscious effort to keep track of your signs. So let's take a look at J. We're looking for brackets. So we work our way through the equation until we find our first set of brackets, and we ask ourselves, are there any child brackets within? 4 times 8, there's no child brackets, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of the bracket. 4 times 8 is equal to 32, and we drop the rest of the equation. So whatever was on the left, we bring it down. So now we have 5 minus, and then an opening bracket. So what we're saying here is that we're taking this negative 1, and we're multiplying it by a positive 32. A negative times a positive results in a negative, and 1 times 32 is equal to 32. So now our new line is 5 minus 32. 5 minus 32 is just subtraction. That gives us minus 27, and that's our final answer is minus 27. Let's take a peek at K. So the first thing we want to do is look for brackets. So 5 and then an opening bracket. Okay, so now we ask ourselves, are there any child brackets? So we work through our equation. We have 2 and then another opening bracket. So we start over again. Are there any child brackets? Minus 4 plus 2. There's no further brackets, so we can go ahead and solve the innermost bracket first. So we're going to solve minus 4 plus 2 and then drop the rest of the equation. So we have 5 opening bracket 2 opening bracket minus 2. So we have a 2 directly beside an opening bracket, so we're going to go ahead and solve that. That's expanding. Expanding means multiplying, and we always want to do the innermost brackets first, right? So 2 times negative 2. A positive times a negative equals a negative, and 2 times 2 is equal to 4. And now we have a new line of 5 with an opening bracket right next to it. An opening bracket right next to a number means expand, and we're going to expand 5 times negative 4, because expand means multiply. And so 5 times 4 is equal to 20, and it's a positive 5 times a negative number, so it's going to be a negative result, negative 20. Okay, L. So again, we start for a new bracket. So we look and we see there's a bracket right at the beginning. So now we check to see if there's any children. There are no children within here, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of the first bracket. 12 minus 2 is equal to 10, and we drop the rest of the equation. So now we look at our new line. Are there any brackets? The first bracket is a residual from this one. There's nothing to solve. 10 is a number by itself. There's no operations in here. So now we look at the rest of the equation. And there is another bracket. So now we start over. Are there any brackets within this bracket? And yes, we can see that there's another bracket. So we ask again, are there any child brackets within this one? 3 minus 1. So there's no child bracket within here. So this is the innermost bracket, and we can go ahead and solve it first. So 3 minus 1 is equal to 2, and we drop the rest of the equation. Everything on the left and everything on the right. So now when we look at our line, we have 10 minus opening bracket 4, and then another opening bracket. We want to solve the innermost bracket first, and because there's a 4 directly beside the opening bracket, we need to expand. Expand means multiply, so we're going to say 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is equal to 8, and then we drop the rest of the equation. So we have now a negative sign right next to a bracket, which means we need to expand. So it's negative 1 times positive 8. A negative times a positive will result in a negative, and 1 times 8 is equal to 8. So now we have 10 minus 8. 10 minus 8 is equal to 2, giving us a final answer of 2. Let's take a look at M. We have a bracket right out of the gate, and there's no brackets within it. So we can go ahead and just solve the contents of the first bracket. 8 minus 9 is equal to minus 1, and then we have a 4 directly beside it. When you have nothing separating your numbers, this means multiply. So it's again, we're expanding. We're expanding the negative 1 and the 4. So negative 1 times 4 is equal to negative 4, and that's our final answer. So if you have a number and there's nothing separating it, there's no operator, there's no positive, there's no negative sign, it means multiply. Okay? If you have any problems with that, let me know. Let's take a peek at N. We have 2 and then an opening bracket. So we start over. Are there any more brackets within our current bracket? 1 plus 2. There's no children, so we can go ahead and solve the first bracket first. and we'll drop the rest of the equation. So we bring down the 2 and we bring down the second bracket. So now if we look at our equation, we can say we have 2 with an opening bracket, so we can go ahead and expand that. 2 times 3, because expand means multiply. And we can also go ahead and solve the second bracket because there's nothing stopping us from solving this one. So 4 minus 3 is equal to 3. And that also means multiply, right? So now we're going to have 3 numbers directly beside each other with no operations between them. If there's no operations between them, that means multiply. So we're going to go 2 times 3 times 3. We want to solve the first operation first, so 2 times 3 is equal to 6, and we drop the rest of the equation. 6 times 3 is equal to 18, and giving us a final answer of 18. Let's go ahead and look at O. The first thing we want to do is find if there are any brackets, and there is. Right out of the gate, we have a bracket, and there's no child brackets within it, so we can go ahead and solve the first one. So 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, and we drop the rest of the equation. Now we have a number directly beside another number, so we have no sign in between, so that means we're going to expand. We're multiplying. So 3 times 5. 3 times 5 is equal to 15, giving us a final answer of 15. Let's take a peek at P. So we have 10 minus and then an opening bracket, because we're always looking for brackets first. Now we check to see if there's any child brackets, so 2 plus and then another opening bracket. So we start over again. Are there any brackets within our bracket? 4 minus 2. There's no further brackets, so we can go ahead and solve the innermost bracket first. We're going to solve 4 minus 2, which is equal to 2, and we drop the rest of the equation. Everything to the left, everything to the right. Now we look at our new line. We have 10 minus opening bracket, 2 plus opening bracket. This means we need to expand out our 2, so it's a plus 1 times a plus 2. Plus times a plus is going to result in a positive number, and 1 times 2 is equal to 2, so we can go ahead and clean this up, so it'll be 10 minus 2 plus 2, and of course we're dropping the rest of the equation. So now we look at it and we say, what can we do now? We have 10 minus and then a bracket. So there's no children in here. We can go ahead and solve the contents of this bracket. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, and again we're dropping the left and the right. Everything else is coming down. We're only solving one operation per step. So now we can go ahead and look at our equation. Again, we have 10 minus an opening bracket. A number sign directly beside an opening bracket means that we are expanding, we're multiplying. If we're multiplying a negative times a positive, it's going to result in a negative. A negative sign on its own represents a 1, so it's 1 times 4. So our answer is going to be negative 4. And again, we're dropping the rest of the equation. So now we can go ahead and solve the first operation first. 10 minus 4 is equal to 6, and we drop the rest of the equation. 6 plus 7 is equal to 13, giving us a final answer of 13. Let's look at Q. We want to see if there's any brackets, and there is a bracket right out of the gate, and there's no children in this equation, in this particular bracket, so we can go ahead and solve the contents of the first bracket. 1 plus 9 is equal to 10, and again, we drop the rest of the equation. We look at our new line and there is brackets, but these brackets are just here from a residual from the first one. There's nothing to solve in this bracket, so we can go ahead and move along to the second bracket. When we get here, we have to ask ourselves, are there any children? And there's no children. It's just 2 plus 4. This means we can go ahead and solve the contents of the second bracket. So 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. And again, we're dropping the rest of the equation, so we have to bring the 10 and the minus sign. So now we look at our new line. We have 10 minus an opening bracket. This means we're going to take the minus sign and we're going to expand it into the 6. Minus represents a minus 1, so we're actually multiplying negative 1 by positive 6. A negative times a positive results in a negative, and 1 times 6 is 6. So we can reduce the line to 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is equal to 4, giving us a final answer of 4. Let's look at R now. Again, we're looking for brackets, and right out of the gate we have a bracket, so we're going to go ahead and check to see if there are any children. Minus 11 plus 2. There are no children, so we can go ahead and just solve the contents of this bracket. Minus 11 plus 2 is equal to minus 9, and we drop the rest of the equation. So now we look at our new equation. We have minus 9, and then directly after it we have a 2. Because there's nothing beside it, there's no operation separating it, we're going to have to multiply. That means we're expanding, we're multiplying. Minus 9 times 2. because it's a minus times a positive, it's going to be a negative number because the signs are different. And then 9 times 2 is 18. So our final answer is minus 18. Let's take a look at S. Again, we're looking for a bracket, so we work our way through the equation until we find a bracket, and we find one, so now we have to start over. Are there any brackets? We continue through the equation, and there's no brackets within this one, so we can go ahead and just solve the contents of this bracket. So 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, and we drop the rest of the equation being the 7 at the beginning. Now we look at our new line, we have 7 and then an opening bracket. So this means we need to expand. If we're expanding, it means we're multiplying. If we're multiplying, it's 7 times 4. That just gives us 28. Our final answer is 28. Let's take a peek at T. Again, we want to start off by looking for a bracket. So we look, and right out of the gate, we find another bracket. So now we have to ask, are there any child brackets? 2 plus 3. There's no children, so now we can go ahead and solve the contents of the first bracket. Content of the first bracket resolves to 5, and again we're dropping the rest of the equation. Now we look at our equation to see if there are any other brackets. The first bracket has nothing that can be solved, it's just a number, so we can go ahead and keep looking. So the next bracket we come across, it's halfway through the equation, and we want to ask, are there any more brackets within this bracket? So we continue 4, and then there's another bracket. So we start over again. Are there any child brackets? 2 plus 1. There's no further children, so we can go ahead and solve the innermost bracket first. So we're going to solve 2 plus 1. 2 plus 1 is equal to 3, and we drop the rest of the equation. 5 minus an opening bracket, 4, opening bracket. So the thing we want to solve first is the innermost bracket. So this is the innermost bracket. And we can see that there's a 4 directly beside a 3. A bracket directly beside a number means we're expanding, so 4 times 3, because expanding means multiplying. 4 times 3 is equal to 12, and of course we're always dropping the rest of the equation. So now we have 5 minus a bracket of 12. Now we have a minus sign directly beside a bracket. This means that we're expanding. Negative 1 times a positive 12, and negative times a positive equals a negative, and 1 times 12 is equal to 12. So now we can clean up the line and say it's 5 minus 12. 5 minus 12 is just subtraction, so that equals minus 7. Our final answer is minus 7. So we did a lot here, and brackets can be a little bit confusing. So do take the time to practice, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'm more than willing to go through and explain it. Again, if you had any issues with how to handle signs or how to handle just basic addition and subtraction, you're going to start to see how much more difficult it will be as you continue through. Always keep an eye on your signs. I messed up in one of the examples when I was speaking to it, and it would drastically change your answer. So really do pay attention to your signs. Things to remember when you're solving brackets, because we're talking specifically about brackets here, always do the innermost bracket first. And if you don't have anything separating the number and a bracket, it's a multiplication. So you're expanding, you're multiplying. So a tip just for tracking purposes while you're actually solving an equation, if you have trouble keeping track of where a child and a parent bracket end, you can change the different brackets. So the outermost bracket you could do with the braces, and then you can do the curly for a child, and if there's a child within that one, you can use square. And then if you're in a square and you need to do more brackets, you can go back to the round parentheses, and you can keep doing this just so that way it's easy to identify where the start and the end of an equation is. Again, making it deeper and adding more to it doesn't make the equation any harder. It's just more steps because you're only solving one thing at a time. So always keep that in mind. You're only ever solving one operation at a time, so regardless of how long it is, it doesn't make it any harder. Keep an eye on your signs. I cannot say that enough. Always keep an eye on your signs. And remember that even though this is the third module that we're covering in the orders of operations, brackets are always done first. And whenever you start with your brackets, if you find a child bracket within it, you must do the child bracket first. So our next video, we're going to do the lecture portion of the exponents module. So we're going to go in and look at what is an exponent, how do you solve an exponent, and how does that all play within the orders of operation. You know I love to hear from you, so if you have any questions or any future topics that you would like to see, let me know. Reach out to me in whatever channel suits you best, and I look forward to seeing you at the next video.